Inadequacy by Fairy Eyes. As the eldest, Osumatsu had certain expectations of him to be bigger, smarter, to be leader of the pack, and to always be around to give the big brother advice. And yet, he couldn't help but feel inadequate. It was only natural that he would feel this way. He started to notice one day when he fell asleep next to his younger brother Karamatsu. It must have been cold for Karamatsu, or for himself, because suddenly he found himself closer to the younger man. He realized very quickly that Karamatsu had become bigger somehow. It was enough to jolt him awake and feel it. Karamatsu had built some muscle, which, sure, was the result of his vanity and his strange idea of beauty, but it stood out to Osamatsu in particular. He usually didn't pay attention to whatever the other did, or even the other brothers. When did Karamatsu become bigger? He thought, when he lied there on the ground with him. He then started to recall little moments of Karamatsu being stronger. It used to be, whenever their mother needed help lifting something, usually a sofa to vacuum underneath, she'd call Osamatsu. Naturally, he'd grown annoyed about it. He didn't even realize when she started to call out for Karamatsu, or even Jushimatsu instead. He started to realize that whenever he'd go a day without being called by his mother, he'd feel somewhat disappointed and strangely annoyed. At first he thought it was fine, no big deal, she simply didn't need his help, but now he started to wonder if he's wrong for thinking that. When did Karamatsu become stronger? He thought once more. His breath tickled his neck, and familiar flickering feelings of lust weathered in him. Osamatsu also thought about the other's fashion. He remembered when he saw Karamatsu acting strange that one day. A cold, he said, and how Osamatsu voiced his interest in trying his strange, albeit all dated, fashion. The bad boy look didn't really fit him, he thought, even though they all had the exact same face. Osamatsu realized that his own wardrobe was admittedly simple and just as easygoing as he was. Nothing of his own fashion stood out, and he normally blended in with the rest of the crowd. Osamatsu always sort of envied that about Karamatsu. He didn't accept being just another of the same face. Instead, he wore his strange fashion and honestly didn't seem to care what anyone else thought. And that made him feel strange about his own state of fashion, or rather, lack thereof. When would I be getting my own fashion? The thought echoed in his mind. He finally turned around. The man slept, and was unaware of the lustful feelings that resided in his older brother. The two had been in a friends with benefit relationship for the past 2 months, and Osamatsu wondered why he started to feel so inadequate. Karamatsu didn't do anything wrong. In fact, even though Karamatsu knew what the line was, he still held a certain tenderness that Osamatsu felt inadequate about. He couldn't touch Karamatsu in the way that made Osamatsu shiver. He couldn't pay him the attention of pleasuring just him alone. Osamatsu would often be the bottom out of laziness, and Karamatsu easily fell into the role of the top, taking such good care of his brother that Osamatsu couldn't disrupt things. And yet, he still felt inadequate. He had to depend on his younger brother for everything. And through that tenderness, Osamatsu couldn't be bothered to show Karamatsu any feelings that were different other than lust. The way Karamatsu touched, kissed, and even fucked Osamatsu was tender in a way that he felt could never be replicated. Granted, he was still embarrassing, and Osamatsu wondered what he would have been like as a boyfriend. Then he shook his head. He knew himself better than anyone. He wouldn't like it. Osamatsu never considered himself a romantic sort. That sort of thing wasn't him. It just wasn't. It annoyed Osamatsu. The fact that Karamatsu could easily be romantic annoyed the hell out of Osamatsu. He'd always try to make things even more awkward during sex by trying to seduce him in the most over-the-top ways. Mostly, they were romantic. Roses, wines, fine dining, promises he knew he'd never come through with. They were all just words to ring out in the middle of their genital-to-genital connections. When did Karamatsu become so romantic? And yet, he couldn't deny that despite his annoyances, the sex was incredible. If it didn't feel good, Osamatsu wouldn't have bothered. Despite how embarrassingly tender Karamatsu's pillow talk would be, he couldn't deny all his needs were met. When Osamatsu was naughty, Karamatsu would give him a good spanking. When he just wanted to touch the other's penis with his own, Karamatsu would comply with the addition of amazing reactions from the younger brother. Osamatsu also loved to do it doggy style quite frequently, not because he didn't want to see the other's face, but because Karamatsu could go as hard as he wanted to without worry if it was too hard. Osamatsu gave him free rein, and dear Akatsuka sensei, he took advantage of it. Often the two would start doing new things here and there, usually at Karamatsu's request. Osamatsu was always down to try new sexual kinks. He lapped it up. He begged for it. He was addicted to it. Ugh. When did Karamatsu become so kinky? Otomasu could feel himself stiffen up even more at the memories. However, his hard-on left as quickly as it came when he started to remember how tender and sweet Karamatsu was after they had satisfied each other and cleaned up. He'd always fluff Osamatsu's pillows, he'd listen to any stupid stories he had, and he'd actually listen. He wouldn't half listen like Osamatsu was guilty of, but he'd respond. He'd care about the things Osamatsu had to say even after they had sex together. Normally he'd just be done with it, but Karamatsu treated him softly and tenderly. He'd fetch Osamatsu anything his greedy little black heart desired, and Osamatsu almost resented him for that. Though he knew he shouldn't be, and that he wasn't, Osamatsu just knew he was inadequate. Thank you for listening to this fanfiction recording by Yaoi Meowmaster, that's me. This has been Inadequacy by Fairy Eyes on Archive of Our Own. Please be sure to check the description for a link to the original fanfiction, and leave kudos, bookmarks, comments, anything you can to show your appreciation. Also leave a like and comment on this video below if you liked it, and if you have any other suggestions or what I should read next. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks!